Then they are introduced to hallucinogens and certain secret formulations that are used to open the third eye and bring about what is called enlightenment. Then they are taught the basic principles of occult Freemasonry, which is called archaeometry. And what, might you ask, is archaeometry? Well, in the point of fact, it is something where you learn how to build temples that are suitable habitations for demon spirits. Isn't that a wonderful thing to learn? Anyway, now remember about the law of fives. Well, in Illuminism, you go through 5 stages. These are the 5 steps into the light. The first stage is adoption. This is fellowship with Lucifer. Now, what does that mean? Well, you got to realize Satan is an inveterate copycat. He can't come up with anything creative because he has cut himself off from God, who is the source of all creativity. So all he can do is recycle the same old gobbledygook over and over again. And so when he sees Christians being adopted into the family of God, he figures he's going to try and do the same thing with his slaves. And so, and this is something very important that you need to understand. If you know someone who's a Mason, or if you yourself are a Mason, realize that when you kneel at the altar of Masonry as an entered apprentice, and you take that oath, you are adopted into the family of Lucifer at that moment. Now, you don't probably know that. I did. But most people don't even know that. And so these people are in a very uncomfortable position. And something has to give. And usually, unfortunately, it's their Christian walk. You cannot serve 2 masters. And when a person enters the lodge, they take an oath that they will obey every summons of the worshipful master of their lodge. And so they're serving 2 masters, quite simply. Whether they know it or not, they have linked themselves to the devil, and I can prove it to you. In the Masonic ritual, which I had to learn, when you're kneeling at the altar and you've taken this blood-curdling oath, which Christians are forbidden to do, by the way, see Matthew 5:34 through 37. When you take this oath, then they take the blindfold off, and the worshipful master says, "Brother senior deacon, please remove the cable tow from about our brother's neck, because he is now bound by a much stronger tie to our fraternity." So there's a spiritual tie that is created at that moment, a spiritual link. And if you understood the profound relationship between witchcraft and Freemasonry, you would know what that cord, that cable tow meant, because they've got a rope around their neck. And what that means in witchcraft and the occult is that is a symbol of the umbilical cord of the mother goddess, the Queen of Heaven, linking her to her hidden child. So this guy has just been born again by the Queen of Hell, the consort of Lucifer. And every entered apprentice Mason, in other words, every Mason, has this happen to them. And they don't understand the dynamics, probably 99 out of 100, but they still go through it. Now, what's the next step? Well, it's called illumination. And every Mason goes through this too, except it usually doesn't work very well for them. What I mean by that is there's a point in the Masonic ritual, just seconds before what I just discussed, where the guy has taken the oath, and then the worshipful master begins reading solemnly out of the Bible, Genesis 1:1 and 2. And when he says, "And God said, let there be light," all the Masons in the room clap their hands, and the blindfold off the guy's eyes is removed. And by the light of 3 burning tapers, he sees on the altar the Holy Bible with the square and compasses laying on it. And this is supposed to give him an altered state of consciousness. Usually all it gives him is a slight headache. Then later on, he gets another conscious-raising experience, and this is 3rd degree. And in 3rd degree, he gets to play the part of the Christ of Masonry, which is a guy named Hiram Beef. He's blindfolded, dragged around the lodge, accosted at 3 separate times. The 3rd time, he's knocked on the head by a rubber setting maul, knocked head over heels into a trampoline, trundled about the lodge, buried under a bunch of rubble, and then raised from the dead by the strong grip of the lion's paw, and he learns the secret word of the Master Mason degree. And all of this is supposed to alter his consciousness. However, it doesn't usually do that much, unless they've also been doing the Illuminati exercises. And so what is involved there is that gradually you begin to open up your third eye. Now that might be an unfamiliar term to some of you, but the third eye in the occult is called the Ajna chakra. It's an energy center here, and if it's opened up, supposedly it gives you psychic powers. It gives you the ability to see auras. It gives you the ability to astrally project, to see the future, things like this. Of course, this is all demonic. So what happens is gradually, and this happened to me, I went through an experience where I was deluged in the blinding white light of Lucifer. It felt like my brain was being parboiled in pure light. I cried out in agony. It drove me to my knees. It hurt so badly. And I received the consciousness of Lucifer. I was illuminated. And this is what it means to become an illuminatus. It's just a Latin word for illuminated one. And what this means is that gradually something happens to your mind. It's like a satanic virus is introduced into your mind, and just like a computer virus, it begins to overwrite the human software in your brain with evil, with something that's a lack of compassion, a lack of mercy. You begin to look at human beings as if they were cattle or bugs. You begin to have just, it's hard for me to even talk about because I'm so ashamed of it. This is supposed to bring a quantum leap forward in consciousness and create a higher form of humanity, which is called Homo Noeticus, the new man, who is as far above human beings as you are above cats and dogs. The next stage is conversation. What this means is you have communion with the mighty dead. And what that means, essentially, is that you talk with dead people that are supposedly very wise. Like, for example, I, again, as I mentioned, was a trans-channeler. And I would have conversations one weekend with Jesus, the next weekend with Buddha, the next weekend with Zoroaster, the next weekend with Hitler, the next weekend with Aleister Crowley. I was very ecumenical. And gradually, this is supposed to increase your level of knowledge, your level of wisdom, your level of occult power. And that was preparing you for the next stage. And this is what is called Congress. And no, that doesn't mean you become a congressman. What this means is you have to have sex with a fallen angel. And this is a very appalling and bizarre process. And it really nearly destroys every human being who has to go through it. It nearly killed me. And I went through a formal marriage with a fallen angelic being. And of course you understand there's a biblical principle at work here which Satan is using. And that is when you have sex with someone, you become one flesh with that person. And what happens at that point is you become so demon-possessed that it's like burbling up here around your eyeballs. I mean, you know, I had more demons per cubic centimeter than the entire city of Indianapolis, let me tell you. And the result of that is that you just become a pretty vile, evil person. And then the following stage, and I just thank God that Jesus got me out of this before I got to stage 5, is union. And this is where you become utterly one with Lucifer. You have so many demons inside of you that there ain't nobody home up here but the demons. And there are people like this walking around. I mean, you know, people like Adolf Hitler, people like Charles Manson. And I'm not saying that these people couldn't be saved, because they probably could, but I know it was very painful for some of the stuff I had to go through to get out of this. And I just praise God that He got me out of it before it was too late. Now, I want to explain something about this, because oftentimes when you start talking about the conspiracy, how many of you have heard this? There can't be a conspiracy like this because people can't keep secrets.